Hello and welcome to The Hero's Spouse. I'm Kenda Ruth, here to answer one of your questions about marriage and midlife crisis. Today we have Michelle. Michelle has a bomb drop of February 3rd, 2022, a date of marriage of 2014. Her husband is a clinging boomerang and a low-energy wallower. She says he left at bomb drop for a week. He came back and left again 6 weeks later and hasn't returned. At that time, he was having an affair, and I got the I love you, but I'm not in love with you speech. The alienator was somebody at work who had apparently contacted him out of the blue. He says that they're no longer in a relationship, but they see each other as friends. As just friends or friends with benefits, that is up in the air. He was depressed for about 3 months after he left, but he seems to have moved through that. I worry because he has only monstered once in 18 months. He's usually kind in his words. He texts daily. He calls me every few weeks. We see each other for dinner at least once a month. He hugs and kisses me when he sees me. I worry that he's not moving through any particular stages and he's no longer in counseling, but he does do mindfulness work, and he has given up his job recently, and he's just doing some ad hoc work. I like that he's given up his job because the alienator was there. I try to detach, but I overthink that he has someone else all the time. I'm not even sure this is MLC anymore. So, to all of those listening, not just Michelle, notice the irony. Notice, first thing, everybody goes, oh my God, I don't think this is MLC anymore. Not that they were in it and aren't in it anymore, but first I thought that, but now I think I misdiagnosed. Some of you are saying it after you get an exact match on the MLC quiz or other MLC indicators that you've read about. Oh yeah, it fits everything, but I don't think it is. Because yours is the exception, right? So, not all MLCers monster, Michelle. I got very little monster. I did recognize later that I was getting charming monster. I didn't have a low energy wallower. It's probably a lot harder for the low energy wallower to do charming. But mine was kind. He was manipulative in his kindness sometimes. And just so you know, my husband is not normally charming. I mean, that would be a great asset sometimes. But he's not one of those charismatic, charming guys. In MLC, I realize he actually has those qualities. Doesn't use them much. But your MLC doesn't have to monster. So you do all these clinging boomerang things. He texts daily. And you aren't saying he texts daily for managerial stuff. You aren't saying it's just about the kids or texting because you have taxes to do. He texts you daily. He calls you. He kisses you when he sees you. You're right, clinging boomerang. So it's and I'm not meaning to minimize. It is, don't look a gift horse in the mouth. Because the absence of the high energy, and you have a low energy wallower, the high energy stuff, the absence of the manipulation, the absence of so many of the negative things and drama that you're seeing from others is causing you to question whether it's a midlife crisis, but we don't have to have those. Those are indicators of a midlife crisis, but they're also indicators of high energy replayer. Sometimes we have low energy wallowers who are seething anger and monster. But when I think of a low energy wallower, I don't think of monster. That's not the first go-to in my head. You're describing things that I see for low energy. And he's doing mindfulness on himself. Isn't it ironic that something so positive, but that shows, wait, maybe he knows something's wrong, or often MLCers know something's wrong, but don't care. Or they care, but I can't do anything about it, so I'm just going to run from it. But he's not running, he's doing mindfulness work. And then, oh my God, he's doing something. He's facing his problems. It must not be MLC. Oh, they're showing insight. It must not be MLC. Or he's at a different place in MLC also. And he was in counseling. And most don't go to counseling other than to check off a box. But some do. It's still part of what MLCers do. It's just that not most of them. And you're still within the clinging territory, and you're still within the low energy territory. He was depressed. Seeing counselors doing mindfulness works makes sense. It's just not common. Because you say you're overthinking about someone else all the time. That makes sense. Especially since he did have somebody. And not only did he have somebody, he tells you that he's still friends with her. That bothers me. It does. And it would bother you too, of course. So I understand you're overthinking about that. But I think you're overthinking about the other stuff too. You're taking all of these good qualities or good behaviors and saying because they're good behaviors, and this is my assumption on what you're saying, I'm not sure it's MLC because he's not doing all the bad stuff. He's not showing, and he's showing signs that he wants to figure himself out, but he hasn't ever said, oh, I'm going to come home now. Seems like you're worried that he's not moving through the tunnel because he's not showing the progress you want him to show. He's just kind of stuck in, I'm nice. This is the status quo. And I could just stay here forever. And you know what? That could be true. But that he could stay somewhere forever and that he will aren't the same thing. For a few reasons. Number one, it's still progress. Your bomb drop was almost 2 years ago. Not quite. You're still. I think of, if we have somebody who is going to be an early returner, not premature, but early. In other words, MLC lasts 3 to upwards of 7, and so you have one that is a 3. That's early. Not premature, but it's just that most aren't that early. You have that early one. First thing I would expect, they're probably a clinging boomerang, and so you're seeing them regularly. But you might not see the full turnaround until that 2-year mark. So that turnaround, and then you have 12 months. You have another year there. Don't quote me on these things. They're subjective. But in other words, you're still you're in the early days. And I know that sucks. But the other thing you can do is you have a relationship with him. You're cordial. He kisses you when he sees you. He hugs you. He has dinner with you. He texts you daily. Start a relationship conversation. Now, if you're going to do that, maybe it would just be one question or one statement or one truth dart that really gets somebody thinking, and it might be the catalyst for a conversation that might not go. That's fine. But then figure out where you want it to go and where you need to steer it away, or when, or what happens, how you can steer it away from a relationship conversation. It's not that if it's not going your way, it's if it goes off the rails. If he does start to monster, how can you diffuse? Because you can have a relationship conversation and then, you know what, maybe this was a mistake. Or, maybe it wasn't a mistake, but you know what, I'm sorry, I think I have upset you. I just was trying to take the temperature of where things are right now. And maybe we're not ready to take that temperature even. It might scare him. He might withdraw for a while, or he won't. It's anything is possible out there. But you have enough of a relationship with him. And if you do something, make sure do it subtly so it doesn't feel like bombarded, ambushed out of the blue. Okay? Because you're not describing something that's not MLC. I mean, not everything is MLC, but you're not describing that. You're describing somebody who's low energy. You're describing somebody who is nice. MLCers can be nice. Most of what I saw of Chuck in MLC was Chuck. There was the charming monster, though. And there was the guy who's afraid, but I have an idea with somebody, with Chuck, who has an anxiety disorder. Some of those are the afraid part. That's a root of anxiety anyways. That's who he always has been. These fears that he has. Everything is a catastrophe. And so that was just perhaps highlighted a little bit more in his MLC, but it was something that was present. You're dealing with a low energy wallower, somebody who is depressed. And what is depression? It's deep rest. It is a slowing down. It is a going under the radar of the energy. Whereas a high energy replayer, they are out there trying to avoid by partying. And the low energy wallower may have tried that. may have tried that in the beginning. He left those 6 weeks and he was depressed, but he also tried an alienator. Some things just didn't take. Or he was never going to go that way because he's just, depression is the route that he took. But it doesn't mean it's not MLC. Just because you're not having the check boxes of some poor behaviors. And it's not just looking, when you go through that quiz, notice, I'm trying to recall, I don't think I wrote a lot of questions based on poor behaviors, but more based on what's going on internally. Have their sleep patterns changed? There's one. I ask about high energy. I ask if there's been a trigger. I ask if they're feeling low self-worth, if they're like trying to say they don't know who they are anymore. Some of those keywords. But there's enough questions also that you don't have to, it's not yes to all of them. It's yes to some of them. Especially if you have a low energy wallow and someone else has a high energy replayer, you're going to check different boxes. Okay? So right now, it's not that I'm saying you've told me everything why you think he is an MLC. I'm just saying what you've shown me aren't actually reasons to say not an MLC. Okay? Your job, what do you need to do? You try to detach. How do you do that? How do you try to detach? When you detach, are you thinking about detachment? Are you thinking about, what do I need to do to detach? Detach now. Because I know it's weird, but that is not how you detach. You don't detach by having detachment in your head and thinking, I need to go do it now. Because that is an attachment. If you're thinking about it. Because detach, attach. They're just opposites of this coin. Toss away that coin and go do something. That's how you detach. You detach by not thinking about it, but by going out and getting a life, by healing, by focusing on other things, because detachment then is the byproduct of those healings. And so what do you do when you're overthinking? What are some things you can do to reframe your thoughts, to distract your thoughts, deflect your thoughts? Sometimes you can just use a stop sign and tell yourself, stop, and imagine that. And maybe you can go, what am I thinking this for? And then tell yourself, well, how or why is that not true? Now, you're talking about something you don't know is true or not, huh? Why am I afraid of this? It's already happened. And let's say he is seeing somebody still. It's still the same person. The betrayal is just an ongoing one, not to minimize it with the just, I'm sorry. But it's also the same person in that case. What does that mean? It means he's still lying to you. So that's even a big part of the betrayal. But you've done it before, right? You did this at Bomb Drop. He left. He came back. He left again. You've been on that recovery. You've faced the monster already. You're facing the same monster. But what did you do before that helped you get better and better and better? And the other thing is maybe some hypnotherapy about thought stopping your thoughts, changing your thoughts. I don't want you to ever push and shove those down because you're thinking about something that could be real. But let's say it is real. Some of it is just your questioning, but let's say it's real. My husband, his affair was real, and every time he left, he lived with her. What if the thoughts in my head were, I can't stop thinking about them together? I can't get it out of my head, and it's spinning and spinning. What good would that do me? Sure. Sometimes they were having sex. Most times they weren't. Not only because most times people aren't, I know my husband. And is the relationship really about that, or is that just something that happens within it? And is it going to kill me? It hasn't killed me yet. And what good am I getting out of it? How can I stop that thought? Because it's understandable to have them, but there's nothing you can do about something that's happening. Something that's happening. It's still happening. It's still happening. It's still happening. It's out of your control. What can you do to accept that it's happening? Not make it acceptable, but you recognize and then you say, this is the reality for the present reality. Doesn't mean it's the future one. Now, what do I need to do to redirect my thoughts towards what I can control? Some meditation and hypnotherapy, guided meditation that would be specific for that. or hypnotherapy, or both. Or sometimes a guided meditation is labeled meditation, and for another for another demographic, it might be labeled a hypnotherapy. So sometimes they're interchangeable. Because I don't want you to be overthinking, but I understand your thought that, yeah, that it's not unrealistic, because he's in a midlife crisis and it already happened recently. Okay, so first give yourself permission to say, this isn't something I should sit my thoughts in and bathe in, but it's not unrealistic. I'm not being crazy with the thoughts, although the spinning of the thoughts is crazy making. Okay, that might have been really confusing, because it's a balance, isn't it? It's a balance. You're dealing with something real. Okay, I hope this is helpful, and I will see everybody in the next question.